who am I trying to be? How am I trying to show up for the people that I love in my life? And what are the actions that are going to reflect that?
I am Judd Lienhard, former Army Ranger, college linebacker. I've been a strength and performance coach for over 15 years. Let's get into it.
Extraordinary accomplishments. You're equally as impressive with your amount of insight and introspection.
Listen, adhere to the big rules for yourself, break all the small ones. People attach exercise to something that you do so you can fit into a pair of pants. It has nothing to do with it. I often say it's the time that I'm stripped away from all the roles that I am. I'm not a working person, I'm not a wife, I'm not a mother. I even forego being a female in that moment. I just go to my essence. This is the one area of my life that I am ruthless. And I always have been. Never be a liar and don't be a victim. Because you're not going to end up where you want to be. It's really being able to look at yourself with this kind of a sense of humor and an honesty to be like, oh, I understand why I do that. I don't need that. What am I going to be responsible and replace it with and do it? I went on my instincts. I went, that feels good. I think I can do that. And I followed that. And that allowed me the freedom to live my own life. You don't have to do it like me, but you still have to be responsible. So if it's not the way you want it, it's on you.
So I have the honor of sitting down with Gabby Reece today, a notorious, famous volleyball player, highly accomplished author. I had the privilege of reading your book, one of your books recently. Mother, half of a super couple. I have a ton of questions I want to ask you, but first I just want to say thank you for being here with me.
Oh, well, thank you for the invitation.
How would you sum yourself up as far as your timeline goes? Like, as far as what made you the person you are now?
You know, I think like all of us, you get a special circumstances when you're young. And I say that that's your assignment for your life, the good and the bad, to do your homework. So I think in a really short explanation, I grew up, I didn't live with either one of my parents from age 2 to 7. My mother was quite, not unusually young, but pretty young. And my father was finishing school and they did not stay together as a couple. So I ended up living with childhood friends of my mother that didn't have children of their own. And then I think when she got sorted out, and they lived in Long Island, New York, and they were, and I mean this just in a descriptive way, my Uncle Joe worked sanitation, and my Aunt Norette, had a high school education, and so I learned a lot. What I learned from them, besides loving a child like your own that's not yours, because then years forward, I ended up having a stepdaughter amongst my other children. And I saw two people that were not taught that you could dream your life, that you just took what life gave you.
Yeah, that's
and
a
I
great
remember,
way to put it.
Yeah, as a little kid thinking, I wonder if you could ask and then work for the things that you thought you wanted.
So you remember wondering that as a child?
Absolutely, because it's hard. Sometimes the other route is really hard. You're working super hard, you're not getting ahead, and you sort of say, hey, this is my lane in life. Yeah. And then I moved back, and in that time my father passed away in a plane crash, and my father was from Trinidad, so very different culture than my mother's from New York, and I grew up in a different culture. So luckily, my mother married my stepfather, who's from Puerto Rico, and so then I grew up in the Virgin Islands, which actually had a really similar culture to my father.
Yeah.
So a lot of great things happened there. It opened up my eyes. First of all, living on an island is very different. You're not pressured to what are you going to be? What are you going to do? That's not the way you're raised.
It's a great way to describe it, actually. Yeah, like as far as what I know from island culture.
Yeah, you're sort of living and enjoying relationships, and because it's a small place, you're learning different kind of communication skills. You're not taught facade. It's sort of all these different things. Yeah. And so I'd say, obviously, and that culture is probably within me because of my father. Yeah. And so I think growing up in that culture, even though it was not the easiest as far as the dynamics with my family life, it really made me aware of being around all different types of people. And then I got moved off my junior year. I was 6'3" already at 15. And I fell into sports, and I lived in Florida, and I had some really important people, coaches, a principal, even a boyfriend and his family, that kind of, I'd say, just sort of straightened me out a little, because I needed a little straightening out.
Well, don't we all?
Yeah, I was rudderless.
Yeah. Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar. So you went to Florida before college, or was this?
Yeah, that's how I ended up at Florida State, because I picked up volleyball and basketball, but I was actually better in basketball because
No way, really?
Well, I had a good coach.
Yeah.
So when you're that malleable,
Yeah.
the input of the coach was powerful. Yeah. But I went to a BC camp where you get invited for basketball, and I remember going, maybe I need a net between myself and my opponents, because all these girls that I was playing with, they'll eat your lunch.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I'm going to grind it out for 4 years, because it is a job,
Yeah.
Especially, if you go on scholarship and what have you. So really, very much to my surprise and not at all a plan, I ended up going to college on a scholarship.
For volleyball.
Correct. Yeah. So within 19 or 20 months of leaving the Virgin Islands, I all of a sudden had this whole new life.
You were pretty decent at volleyball. Retired your number.
Yep.
Do you still own a lot of records there?
I do, and I don't know why, but I somehow do. I always say I'm very coachable, and I think fears can be very powerful. I was kind of needed to do stuff and get it done. And the other thing I think that I recognized really early was what an opportunity is.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a lot of them. So when they started to show up, I was like, wait, this is an opportunity. So I think to take care of the opportunity was very innate in me.
Man, that is very rare to have at that age. First of all, to question the nature of life when you're with blue collar people, to see if there's more out there, and then to recognize how rare opportunities are when they come your way are two very unusual things for a young person to possess, and that introspection. Yeah.
I think it's, I always say, when you're not raised like with your mom, and this is not, if, my poor mother, if she ever heard this, it's just the facts. I think you develop other things when you're sort of not shielded by your parents. And even though the couple in New York really were quite loving, I still was a little bit on my own.
Yeah.
And so everybody reacts differently. And I do think I have a hypervigilance that made me start to look at the world around me.
So can we back up just a little bit? Like, before you moved to Florida, were you into sports at all?
A little.
A little bit?
I was active, and, growing up on an island, and again, this is, I went to college in 1987, so this is before phones, and so you're outside a lot. I played a little bit of volleyball, nothing serious, because where was it going to go?
Yeah.
And it was fun for me, and I liked being on a team for the most part back then. But nothing organized, not really. It's
crazy.
Yeah.
You told a story in your book, which is fantastic, by the way, of the handstands. I really love that. It reminded me of something that happened to me in my youth. Because the coach would make you walk on your hands, and because you were so tall, you didn't want to do it, so she would make you do push-ups.
Yes. To get water break, you had to go on your hands. So I did push-ups till everyone was done.
But that's not the end of the story, which is what I love most, because years later, and which is nothing wrong with you if you can't do it and you have a fear. There's all fears we don't overcome. You overcame that fear years later, which is really cool to me, like in your adulthood. Like, you never gave up on it. You know what I mean?
Well, I think I probably put it in my pocket for a lot of years. Yeah. And then, like, literally years later, when I met Laird at 25, we would always take this little run. And he would, at the end of the run at this beach, do these handstands against a rock. Yeah. There's like a rock at the end. And I thought, oh, come on, are we back with back on our hands? And I thought,
Did you know my coach in college?
Yeah, I was like, is this? And so I thought, you can do a handstand against the wall. And then I started incorporating into my workouts because I thought of something to be uncomfortable with. This was definitely an easy one.
Yeah.
To deal with.
Yeah. But if somebody hasn't been tall their whole life, I don't think they understand how high up your head is off the ground when you're doing a handstand.
The ground is so far away.
Yeah, I can see that. I loved it because, like, when I was a little kid, I was riding a motorcycle, and the clutch was a little too big for my hands. And it popped up, and it came down, and the handlebar hit my side and hurt my side quite a bit. I think it bruised a kidney. I didn't know at the time, but I was in pain, and I was scared. And I didn't get back on the motorcycle for 2 years. And my dad was cool about it. He didn't pressure me, but like, it took me 2 years to get over my fear, but I just looked at that motorcycle every day for 2 years. And as soon as I read that story, I'm like, that reminds me of, it took me a while, but it happened. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I think what's interesting about that, though, is think about your dad. And you already mentioned that you have a brother, so I don't know if you have other siblings.
No, just the brother.
But I mean, obviously you all are a macho group.
Yeah.
The fact that your dad didn't say, hey, you got to do it now. There's something to be said for, Laird has a philosophy. If you have a mishap, like for him in surfing, he's like, you got to get back on the horse right away. Yeah. So you don't get this weird narrative. So that's one approach, and that's maybe more of from an expert point of view. But when maybe someone's being introduced to something or learning, giving them the space to go, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah, and just having the soft skills of knowing when somebody is ready. If you're their mentor, knowing like, oh, you're just not ready.
Yeah, that's right.
If they are ready, then know when to push them a little bit.
Yeah, and like, hey, you got this.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
My son wrecked his bike about a month ago, pretty bad. And I gave him a pep talk before to get him back on the bike. But I kept my hand on him the whole way back to the car, and he was shaking. Yeah. And just gave him a good sense of accomplishment afterwards. It was kind of a good moment for us, But he wasn't ready to not have the hand on his back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was like a moment I won't forget with my son too. So I wonder if sometimes my dad had that same moment with me.
Yeah, and when you do dangerous things, like handstands are not dangerous things, but riding bikes are, I think it's getting people to have a relationship with this is all part of this whole experience. So when things happen that are scary, you kind of understand that that's almost like you're getting a new built-in skill.
Yeah.
To do the thing.
It's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to jump into this ahead of time, but you do hypoxic training too, which is kind of goes into that a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was thinking, because you're married to Laird Hamilton, and I was trying to think of a couple that, when put together, was more impressive than you guys. And
I'm sure they're out there.
Maybe.
Lots of them.
I don't know if the accolades, because he is a world-renowned big wave surfer,
yes,
inventor of the toe-in surfing, pioneered like hydrofoil, I believe.
He was involved in pioneering that. And the thing that Laird really did kind of, I would say, more solo, and he just forced a couple friends to do it with him, was stand-up paddle surfing. Yeah. So he would use that as a form of training when it was flat out, which it's flat more often than not. People don't realize big wave surfers, for it to be big, a lot of elements have to come together, and they can have seasons where there's really very few days. Yeah. And depending on weather patterns and such. So I would say, as much as Laird is a really interesting athlete, very interesting athlete, he's a creative.
Yeah, I got that sense. Yeah, because he was always working in the shed when he can't catch a wave.
And just even the way his mind works, it isn't just I'm going to win in number one. It's like I have this passion for this thing. What's a creative other way I could apply it and do it, so I can do it more. Yeah. And so I think it's really interesting. Like where me, I'm like point for point, what's on the line, who wins and loses. Yeah. He's completely different. He's really for the experience.
Because he was good enough to be a competitive surfer when he was younger, and he chose not to because he saw how he actually has a really cool story as a youth, as far as meeting his dad, and then meeting his stepdad, introducing his stepdad to his mother, which I thought was really cool. He's actually born in a saltwater sphere.
In San Francisco.
Which is crazy.
I know. It's all God's design, right?
Yeah,
you start to look at stuff, you go, oh, this person had a line into this path. And because people ask me a lot, like, well, it's so dangerous. And I go, well, first of all, Laird prepares like a military person. The level of seriousness and preparation and the lack of, being a cavalier about this gives you a lot of comfort. But the other thing is, straight out, you just see it and you go, this guy's destiny. Yeah. Like, you can't get in the way of that.
I like that he has a 20-foot clause in his contract.
And it exists to this day.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool as a person who schedules his life, and you got to make that call, and you have to say, so the 20-foot clause is, so in Hawaii, they measure the back of the wave. Okay. In California, typically the front.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so Hawaii, if you say 20 feet, it's 40 feet in the front.
Yeah.
And that's meaningful for a big wave surfer. Yeah. That's sort of this threshold that becomes... like, I can't miss that. Yeah. Because those are more special. They start to get, incrementally more special. So oftentimes for his business, we put in, especially if it's in the season, like, late October to February, the swells come. The swells, the low pressures that bring snow bring large waves. It's the same system. Okay. So in the southern hemisphere, it's summertime, opposite.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So we used to say, hey, this is like January typically, and it's been fun once in a while to have to make the call and go, Laird can't make it.
That's actually pretty awesome.
It is, yeah. It's
awesome.
So
there's a lot of questions I want to get into, but first of all, what was it that you think drew you guys to each other early in your relationship?
Well, I interviewed Laird, and on paper, it made absolutely no sense at all. Laird had a 4-month-old child and was sleeping in his barn. Him and his wife, who I called like my wife for the last 29 years, Maria, they were going through their own struggles, and I was going to work. I wasn't there to...
Well, were you modeling at the time too?
I was done modeling, and I had really parlayed everything into playing professional volleyball, but I was doing TV.
Okay.
Because it was sort of a more interesting skill, and I was doing MTV Sports, and I did this show called The Extremist. And so I'd interview. I had 2 female guests. All my guests were guys, and I just remember thinking, oh, Laird, what a unique, very intense person, and then we crossed paths a few days later, and it was there was something pretty instant. And one thing about Laird is he's a very definitive person. So if he looks at you and says, like, I'll be there, or if you're in trouble, and he will come and there's no questions.
You mentioned that he's good at living in the moment, too.
And it's a skill that he has developed. Really? Imagine the chaos that they've dealt with.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Hey, my guy's about to drown, and I have to risk myself to pick them up. The guys that do that, they don't decide that. Yeah. They react and act. Yeah. And so Laird has something where when you're with him, you're like, oh, yeah, no, this is who this guy is. And when I was younger, not so much younger than 25, I remember being around a lot of professional male athletes and thinking, I'd like to find somebody that I was excited about the way I was around those men. But a lot of them were all over the place. Yeah. Like, none of them would be like, hey, I'm going to dedicate myself to you. Yeah. And Laird had this combination of, he has a girlfriend. It just happened to be the ocean. So that was okay. And it's like, I'm going to be with you. But also, you got this idea that you were with somebody who, he wasn't going to let me push him around. Yeah. And he was exciting. And not like, woo, let's go out. Him in his own energy sitting at a coffee table at 7 a.m. is exciting.
Wow, that's pretty rare and cool.
Yeah, so I thought, and I got the impression this guy can handle all the things I can't.
Yeah.
And being from an island, I actually say the fact that we were both raised on islands has more to do with why we're together than like, oh, you're big and you're blonde and you like sports.
Yeah, everybody looks to the superficial things.
Yeah, and it's like, well, no, our values are very similar. Yeah. So I feel really fortunate.
It's funny that it's like a common theme. It's like similar values, but complementary attributes. You guys are very different with your attributes, very similar in your values. I think that's always a good combination for a couple, right?
I think it's helpful. I've seen people all the ways, but when you feel the same about, how you treat people and money and God and, just sort of an overview, doesn't mean it has to line up, because I think it's good to push each other through your own beliefs. Yeah. And we do that. And just in the nature of, people don't love to hear it, male and female, it's like you're going to push each other into your beliefs and have those conversations. But there's mutual respect and sort of the understanding of it's on you to figure out what's going to make you happy. Yeah. I can't do that for you. Yes. And I think both of us approach life like that.
Your book is called My Feet Are Too Big for the Glass Sipper, correct?
Yes.
And that's the 2013 book anyway.
Yeah.
It's not normally the type of book I would read, but I'm so glad I did. There's so many valuable lessons on marriage in that book, more than I'd expected. Mm-hmm. Just because I knew this about you. You brought a lot of insight into things, but you brought a lot of insight into your marriage. And you had talked about, you guys had gotten divorced early in your marriage.
Well, we filed. We never went all the way through. Yeah.
And you talked about, he would be very moody, which is something I can definitely relate to.
Sure.
And you would take those moods a little personal. And then you learned how to not stew on stuff, but be direct, when things were wrong. Those are all extremely valuable lessons.
Well, I think unless you come from a home that models a lot of things, how do you know except to fumble through it yourself? And a lot of times people, I don't want to say they give up, but they sort of go, this is too hard, I can't do this, and they quit. And actually, that was more my tendency. Laird was the one who's like, are you done with this yet? Do you want to try to work this out? And I remember us meeting up. He was actually coming to get some snowboarding gear from the house because we weren't together. And he was going snowboarding, so he came from Hawaii. And we were talking, and I shared now, right? oh, the moodiness, because I handled things stoically.
Yeah.
But then inside I was like, probably not creating a grudge, or maybe sort of going and that and this and that. And I sort of shared what I was experiencing. And he asked me one simple question: why didn't you say anything? And I thought, oh, so what?
How dare you ask me that?
Why didn't I say anything? And he was the one to really give me some rope to be scared, and to be scared of being vulnerable. And said, okay, can we try to move on? And what I've learned, two things that it felt really important for people in any relationship is, one, don't be afraid to have a 1 hour uncomfortable conversation for the health and longevity of your relationship.
That's great advice.
It's going to come up.
Yeah.
And let's say you're not good at this. So go for a walk and be side by side.
Yeah.
And just go, hey, and start the conversation with, listen, I'm not saying it's you, it's me. I need to share some feelings. Yeah. So you're not attacking the person. And the chances are, if you're creating an environment that's safe, let's say, they'll take ownership of the things, or they'll be able to, because they don't think that they're going to get their head ripped off for it.
That's such good advice.
And I learned that from Laird. He's really good. Like, you can say anything, he'd be like, oh, it seems normal.
You also brought up something like, I think it's something about the fire tongs in the book. He was complaining that the fire tongs weren't long enough, and he said something rude to you when you asked. And then he came up to you in the kitchen and hugged you from behind.
Yeah.
And that you took that as an apology, because that's what he meant that to be.
Sure.
And that you had the foresight, their insight to be a lot of people, they need to hear the words, I'm sorry, but that's not how some people apologize.
Yes.
And I thought that was extremely insightful and could be of value to people in relationships too. Like,
yeah,
there's
and
different ways.
not every time, right? Like, sometimes it's like, hey, listen, if you're really getting crazy, you might want to go, hey, sorry. Yeah. But tongs, it's like, you know what, a hug's probably going to do it. Because I mean, do I need to be crazy? I don't.
Yeah.
It's like we got a lot of bigger things to deal with than like we had a moment.
Yeah.
And the other thing I learned is, you don't actually want people to abandon who they are. So Laird's moodiness is connected to a lot of great qualities that Laird has. And so it's really on Laird to work it out how he wants to navigate that through his life. But what I asked for him is, listen, feel however you want to feel. That's right. But could you create a place inside, like an envelope, that there was always a place for me? So it wasn't you against the world in that moment, because that's really probably why I got my feelings hurt. Like, wait, I'm bounced outside, now I'm, So in your internal thing, could I still always have a safe place? And I won't walk on eggshells. I won't accommodate you. But I know that's okay. So we learned how to have both of those things happening simultaneously.
That's great advice. A thing I wrote in here is shiny eyes.
Shiny eyes, yeah.
Yeah, that stuck with me too. Like,
I still practice that every day.
Can you explain that a little bit to people?
Sure. So, and by nature, and you're not going to experience this today, I'm probably a pretty serious person. I wouldn't say I walk around like all like joyful, like have a good day, It's just not my nature.
Yeah.
I'm really inside my head a lot.
Yeah.
And so what I learned is I would see Laird, for example, and I hadn't seen him for a while, and I think to myself, God, I love that guy. I'm so happy to see him. And Laird would see this, a flatness. So what would happen is then when I go to see him, he'd be like, oh, how was your day? And I thought, oh. And we got off into the wrong start.
Yeah.
And so what I learned is, and I do it in the morning, first thing, or when I've been gone all day and I re-enter, or he re-enters. When I go down in the morning, he's up many hours before I am. The first thing I do is I look at Laird and I force it. And I'm like, hi, good morning, because we're starting our day. And you don't deserve like, hey, I haven't woken up yet, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's like, and if I'm not ready, I keep myself upstairs.
Yeah.
He's not, on me. And so I gather myself, and I've said this more lately in the last sort of 8 years, 10 years. Who am I trying to be? How am I trying to show up for the people that I love in my life, even the people at the grocery store?
Yeah.
And what are the actions that are going to reflect that? And it would be somebody that would show up that would make you feel good.
Yeah.
First thing.
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, well, it's especially important for man and wife to practice this. It's such a good thing. Men, too, aren't exempt from shiny eyes, right?
Right.
I just think women have so much more going on in their day-to-day life. I think it's especially important for them to, because when a man walks in the door, she's been dealing with all, and I'm assuming that it's a stay-at-home mom and a go-to-work dad, or, but even if it's not a stay-at-home mom, she's a working mom, she still tends to have to take on most of the household responsibilities. So when the man walks in, I think it's just more often women that have had to deal with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So when he walks in, it's hard for them to give the shiny eyes, And,
and we don't have quick releases.
Yeah.
Like you guys know how to like be angry, be and move through it. I think it's harder for us, and we're also processing so many details because our brains work that way.
Yeah.
That sometimes we get so bogged down in that we forget that, hey, this is the guy I love.
Yeah.
And how do I also do both?
Yeah. And I read it, I was like, well, especially for man and wife, but this also applies to like with your children when they walk in the door, or like you said, with people in your neighborhood or your neighbors or your coworkers. Just simply the right look early on, even if you don't genuinely feel that in that moment, is going to set the tone for the rest of the interaction. You know?
Well, and it's sometimes people go, well, I don't feel. It's like, yeah. If you're become an adult at some point, it's on us to go, how am I choosing to be? How am I choosing to live? What kind of environments do I want to be in? And how do I make that happen? And not wait for others.
It's so important that we separate being fake from how you act and how you feel can be two different things. And as adults, like you said, we kind of have a responsibility to act a certain way regardless of how we feel to some extent.
I think so.
We can't always wear our emotions on our sleeves, right? And that's not being fake. I think people get that confused in their mind a lot.
Yeah, no, I definitely believe in the authentic part.
Yeah.
I just believe greater of not being led around by my feelings and my emotions.
That's a great way to put it.
That's all it is. It's like me going, hey, I'm not trying to be that person. I'm trying to be this person. And also, the hope would be is that when you leave anyone's sphere, you've left it better than when you got there. That doesn't mean I can't have hard conversations. I'm not confrontational. I can be all those things. But generally, when I'm walking around through my life, I would like to leave your space better than when I arrived.
I love that. Just as a philosophy, like leave someone's sphere better than when you enter it.
Yeah. Give them a little energy, a little kindness, have a positive interaction. It's not hard.
Yeah. Such great advice. So I want to talk about fitness with you because obviously you're one of the fittest people in the world, one of the most extraordinary athletes in the world. When you met Laird, you were actually much more famous. You guys, are equally famous now, but when you met him, you were much more famous than he was. That says something to his sense of self too, to be with such a well-known and famous woman. Yeah, I think you were the first one that has a Nike shoe named after you.
Or
you're a Nike shoe?
I did. It was very good timing. What happened is Bo Jackson came along. They gave him CrossFit became, this sort of category of like I train for my sport for this and this sort of, mix moshing, right? Yeah. And so I was elected. We don't even wear shoes in beach volleyball. To be the female, because I trained, even then I started training pretty hard. I was always a person trying to earn it, if I could say that. Yeah. And so part of that was my training. And so I was brought into the category, and my designer was a gentleman named Tinker Hatfield. So if there's any sneakerheads, Tinker is, the Midas touch for sure. Yeah. So we did several SKUs. In fact, we made the first female black shoe for women, because otherwise if you wanted to wear a black shoe as a woman, you had to buy a man's shoe.
Well, that's crazy. I had no idea.
Yeah, well, it was a minute ago.
That's weird.
Well, we had very little apparel, very little, stuff like that. So I think it was Nike's attempt to broaden out, and Tinker, listen, I could have been a squirrel and Tinker would have made a killer
Was he
shoe.
The one that designed Prefontaine's shoe, I believe, or the first cleats or something like that?
No, he wasn't Prefontaine. He was the guy who did a lot of the Jordans.
Jordans, that's what it was.
Yeah,
yes.
And a lot of other things. And
yes,
I'll tell you a really quick funny story. When MJ retired the first time from basketball and went to baseball, Nike was like, okay, well, we'll wrap it up. And Tinker's like, I think you might want to hold off and not kill the Air Jordans.
That's crazy. They almost killed Air Jordan.
They did. And so, they kept, obviously, luckily, and then he came back, and now we're still here. But
that's crazy.
I know.
The cool thing is you're an elite athlete, but, I think there's a misconception with celebrities, coming from a non-celebrity background for sure. Mm-hmm. When men and women see celebrities are in shape, they're like, well, yeah, it must be nice. You know, she has somebody take care of her kids and somebody cooks her food. They just make these assumptions, right? And in the book, you make it very clear through honest storytelling that that is not the case, that you still have to deal with a lot. You still have to deal with kids. You're folding laundry. You tell a great story in there about Owen Wilson coming by on the day you're delivering. You had
making chili.
You're making chili.
So
it's just very relatable.
So my youngest, my third daughter was born on New Year's Day. Who has a baby on New Year's Day? It's ridiculous, right? So I'm there and I start to go in labor. And what happened is my very dear friend flew in the night before. So I think there was a part of me that's like, oh, I can relax now because she's here, because I had other children. Laird was there, and so I thought, oh, well, maybe I can make them all a meal.
That right there's the difference between men and women. If I was going into labor, I would not be making anybody a meal. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, and if men had to have babies, no offense, there'd be a low population.
Definitely not.
You'd be like, what? So, I mean, if you guys had to nurse or bleed every month, there is no way. We would have died out a long time ago. We'd be gone.
Yeah. I say that with no shame. For sure.
Oh, yeah, there's no shame. I can't lift really heavy things.
Yeah, that's the one thing we got.
I'm like, it's burning. Run through the door. No, so I thought, I can make a chili that's easy because labor takes a while. I got some time. And earlier that day, Owen Wilson had called my house because, truth be told, his brother Luke had done a little adventure with Laird like months before. And Owen lives on Maui. We were on Maui at the time. And so I think it was like brother competition. Like, well, when I get to Maui, I'm going to go do something fun with Laird. So he calls and he's like, hey, Gabby, is Laird there? And I go, actually, he's at the beach. He was at a beach called Hokipa Beach surfing. And then he goes, is he going to be around later? And I was like, actually, no, Owen, I'm in labor. I think we'll probably be at the hospital by then. And he goes, oh, and I go, but he's there if you want to go see him. But they come into my house. Laird comes home. Here goes Owen Wilson in tow. And I go, okay, whatever. And I made the chili. I made cornbread. So he's fiddling around, and it's kicking up. Now I'm in labor, right? It's like, electric shock at the counter. And he's like, hey, said something about, have any food or something? And I said, yeah, actually I have chili.
The way you told it sounds like, that sounds just like Owen Wilson.
Oh, yeah. And he's like, do you have any sour cream? And I was like, oh, this guy. This is why I didn't marry an actor.
He knows you're in labor, right?
Yeah, and his friend was sweating and getting uncomfortable. Yeah. And his friend's like, oh, maybe we should go. And I was like, why? Because I'm in labor, And so, yeah, it just made it a fun extra caveat. Besides, it was January 1st. It was Owen Wilson. Here's your sour cream and cornbread. And, it made it more fun, for sure.
That's amazing. I do want to back up a little bit because I forgot to ask about your kids. How do your kids handle being with two such accomplished parents? Because that has to be kind of a lot of pressure on them that I feel like a lot of people don't experience. Like, have they said anything? Are you aware of that they, how they feel about it? And then how did that affect how you raised them?
It's a great question, and it was one that I learned later as a parent. So Laird and I, we really do have the mentality like, hey, if you can do stuff yourself, do it. So I am always and perpetually have a blue collar mentality. Yeah. Doesn't matter. It's who I am. And Laird is very similar, differently. He's just like, I can do that, You
told a story of him like taking the headboard apart to get into the bedroom.
He can do it. And I always ask him like, why can you fix that or do that? And he's like, well, because I grew up at the end of the road on Kauai. You didn't buy a new one.
Yeah.
You did it. You fixed it. You figured it out.
Yeah.
So what happened is we very much have been available to our children all the time as parents. Here's your breakfast. I'm here to serve. I'm here to be here. I'm your mom. Mm-hmm. And then one of my daughters went through a really hard time after I wrote that book. And it was certainly the largest learning chapter for me as a parent. You have a teenager who's experienced something, and now you are in a pretty serious time and you need help. So I ended up, going to a therapist. Long story short, we went to many until I found the right person. And this woman said to me, can you not understand that the world is telling her something else? Because I thought, the way I grew up, hey man, your parents are together. They have a pretty peaceful relationship. You have a clean home. You have good food. You're safe. We can provide education, travel. You're good, because that was my list.
Yep.
But I didn't realize that, yes, she had a lot of these primary things taken care of, but whispering to her all of the time, and this is my most empathetic child, who's also my most powerful.
Yeah.
So she looked the part, is, what are you going to do? Nobody ever asked me that question. Laird and I, if you could pay your bills, you're good. Our parents were like, cool. So it dawned on me like, oh, if you go on the left side of parenting, you have to deal with the consequences of the right side. If you're on the right side, you have to deal with the consequences. And it's just, there's actually no way to get it right. So what you do is you muddle through, and as you learn, you go, okay, I understand that you feel safe and we're here and you're not worried about where your next meal is coming from, but you are dealing with something else. So I think I think two of them kind of don't care. And then I think it was the middle one that navigated it. And now she's a young adult and seems fine. But it is something to consider. If people are listening to this and you're a high-powered CEO or accomplished at anything you're doing, you have to recognize that maybe your kids are going to feel the pressure of that, and that's going to be harder than you could realize.
Yeah. A lot of us were very privileged to not have to live up to something that's in the same house as us all the time, whether it's an older brother that's very successful or a parent or parents. I call it the Teddy Roosevelt syndrome because everybody knows who Teddy Roosevelt was, but Teddy Roosevelt had a son, Teddy Roosevelt Jr., that was a very accomplished person in his own right, and actually won the Medal of Honor in World War II, was killed in World War II. And nobody remembers Teddy Roosevelt Jr. And he speaks in his biography a lot about being in the shadow of his father his entire life. And it is a lot. Like you said, if you're a CEO or something, be aware of that. There's a lot of pressure in your kid, even if you don't feel like you're putting that pressure on them, the world is.
Yes, and I think maybe one layer harder for a son. I think there's a Greek proverb, like something like, sons of heroes are pestilence or something like that. Wow. So I think with girls, it's a little different. Maybe I could only liken it to if you had a mom who was a beauty queen and you were a daughter. Maybe that would be right. Let's just say. But I think also it's having a little more awareness. Well, yeah, but yes and no. But I think for a son, it's really trying to get into him and making sure, because also then guys are like, how was your day? Fine. What'd you do? Nothing.
They don't speak. Yeah.
Right. So it's trying to get that conversation out of them. Also,
the hardest thing to do is trying to pull things out of teenagers.
Yeah.
They just do not talk.
No, they don't. Girls will.
Yeah, boys. It's boy teenagers.
So I would say with a son, so maybe I always was grateful secretly. I thought I was going to have sons. I was like, man, I would be such a good mom to sons. Like, you're hungry? Good. Food. You look tired? Go to bed. Take a shower. Girls are so complex in the nuance of communication. But I remember thinking, I'm so glad maybe I didn't have a son that you had to be Laird's son. Yeah. Like, you scared?
Exactly. Like every time he doesn't want to do something, it's like, your dad's a big wave surfer.
Yeah. So I secretly was maybe glad.
Yeah, man, that's great. That would be very hard. I'm glad I'm not his son.
Well, and it's easy for him. That's the thing. Yeah. That whole like courageous thing or whatever, that's just a part of who Laird has always been. Yeah. And so it wasn't, I think people don't realize certain things you're sort of born to.
Yeah. I mean, it's really ironic. I mean, we're in George Foreman's studio right now. Yeah. George Foreman Jr., George Foreman just passed.
I know.
And his son is an extremely impressive and successful man. You know what I mean? And it's like, can you imagine, he's both a blessing and a curse to have George Foreman as your father. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And then he's going to name you George. Yeah. It's like, we joke that Rafael Nadal has a son. Yeah. And he named him the same thing. I'm funny. Like, you live in Spain where tennis is important. Yeah. And you're going to name your son
the same name.
It's like, come on. Let's think that through just a little.
No joke. Oh, it's so true. I don't know. And then like, so I'm good friends with Bert Soren, and his father is Richard Soren, who started Sorenex. And so, those two men, everybody just assumes that your success is because of your father. Like, you can never be self-made in people's eyes, There's just, this is a digression from what I want to talk about. It's just a very interesting topic.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is their destiny. Going back to destiny, it's like there's something, and if the parents can help them figure it out, it can be really powerful, because you could actually stand, like in certain ways emotionally, my daughters are more evolved than I am. Yeah. Because a lot of this is overcompensation. Success oftentimes is overcompensation. Let's not kid ourselves.
Absolutely. I just talked about it with somebody. Yeah,
I think if my kids are emotionally ahead of me, in a way if we can sort of highlight that and go, hey,
Yeah.
This is also an additional form of success, just to be clear.
Absolutely. That's good for you for doing that. Like showing kids that success can take a lot of different forms, right?
That's right.
Yeah. It's funny because the last person I talked to on a podcast, we talked about why people work out and that people just assume you're into yourself and you're superficial. It's like the fact is most people I know that really work out, we're dealing with some issues. And that's the way we know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Cheapest therapy on planet.
It really is.
Yeah. For me, it's always been a real grounding force for me my entire adult life, but it also brought me so many great things. I associate so many positive things in my life with training, with coaching, with being coached, that it is a North Star for me for sure.
Man, that's the truth right there. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
So you talk about being present in the moment. What's one simple principle that keeps you grounded when life gets chaotic? Because I feel like you're a very grounded person.
You know, I've thought about this a lot because that word grounded, if you want to talk about the word that has been used when people know me, that is the number one word always. And I to be honest, it's not that I always laugh because in my mind I'm like, yeah, I need to be less grounded, right? Like I joke I'm a Capricorn. I'm very stubborn in a different way. There's certain traits that it's like, I had a guy say to me once who was working on me because I have really, really, really tight quads that have impacted the health of my knees. And some of it's volleyball and repetitive trauma, but some of it is that's where I stuffed all my crap.
Yeah.
Was in my hips and in there. And he said to me, and this is like a year ago, Gabby, you use your legs to push through everything. Why don't you try using your wings? And I thought, cool. Oh, dude, yeah, that's a great idea.
That's cool.
So I think the grounded comes from a few places. One is there isn't a day that goes by that I'm just not aware of my good fortune.
Yeah, gratitude.
It's really, and it isn't, I'm not one of these people where it's like fluffy, you know, like I feel so much gratitude. It's something that is deep inside me, and it can come out in a very matter-of-fact way, but it's how I feel. The second part of that is I always say to somebody, because somebody said to me once, oh, you know, you're very humble. And I go, I'm not humble. I understand what the big rules are, and I don't need, one thing about my personality type is, once something is clear to me that it is what it is, I don't need to learn that lesson again. So I think I don't want it to have some big fall from grace because I lost the plot.
Yeah. Wow.
And so it's also connected to that hypervigilance, which is what are the principles in life, whether it's tell the truth or be kind or be helpful.
Is that what you mean by the big rules?
Yeah. Those are I always tell my girls, listen, adhere to the big rules for yourself. Break all the small ones. All the ones that men make, break all those. Question them, push, do all that.
Yeah.
For sure. The big ones, once you know for yourself, once you know, live by them.
I think that's so important because there's so many, morals and rules to follow, rules to live by, what you have to do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. To understand what are the fundamental rules, the big rules, the principles that you have to live your life by, and then give yourself some grace, more grace. Give yourself grace in all areas, but more grace in some of those other areas, maybe.
Yeah, or throw them out altogether.
Yeah.
We're told so many things. Oh, you have to do this. Then you have to go to college. Then you have to get that job. Then you have to get those zeros. Then you got to da-da-da. No, it is your one life.
There's a fine line between when the rules stop being your guardrails and they start being your prison walls.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And we live in a time where also everybody gets to chime in.
Yeah.
And then you're living someone else's life. And one thing Laird and I, going back to that luxury we talked about, we've always had the luxury, we just didn't know it was a luxury because it was scary, to live our own lives. I didn't check in with anybody to go, well, what do you think? Is that a good idea? I went on my instincts. I went, that feels good. I think I can do that. And I followed that. And that allowed me the freedom to live my own life.
Is that a luxury, or is that something we could all do if we had the courage to do it, though? I mean, that's kind of the question.
I think it could be both, because I think even, like I talk about obligation, the fact that I didn't live with my parents, so at 2 years old, all of a sudden, there was a part of obligation that went out the window.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So the fact that I've shown up for my children and I didn't put this on them, they feel an obligation to us or our opinion. I don't want them to,
Yeah.
but they do.
Man, that's another great point. I didn't really expect the conversation to go down this route, but this is very interesting. Like, as a parent, be careful of the obligations you put on your children, either intentionally or unintentionally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if they feel obligated to you, then they're never going to really pursue their passions or feel free to go really see who they could be. You know?
Yes. And let's say you have a son who grows up in a single home with a mother, and she busts her ass and provides and is like the real deal. And there's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
How in the world, I wouldn't be one of them either, is this son not going to feel obligated?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we use that then?
Sons have a rare ability. Daughters often feel obligated. Sons have a rare ability not to.
but yes to their single mothers.
Yeah, maybe.
You know,
yeah,
and their
that's
grandmothers
true. That's
and
true.
things. So how do we turn that into fuel
Yeah.
for them to pursue their own personal greatness, whatever that looks like?
Yeah.
And so I think it's just being aware of all the dynamics and doing your best to try to highlight it to your children and go, hey, you might be experiencing this, maybe you're not, but I also I'd like to liberate you,
Yeah.
you know, from that so that you can have enough internal sense and listen to your whisper, because then everyone's going to be
I love
good.
that phrase, listen to your whisper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all given one.
Yeah.
We are. And even when everyone's like, what are you doing? There's something, and you have to remember that as a parent. I have a daughter in particular who really has shown me this. Really, she has some understanding about how her life is going to go. I can't see it, but man, she is relentless. And I don't even totally agree with all of it.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
It's
man,
not up for us to
she has some idea about what her life is going to be about, that I'm going to try to facilitate and put up good boundaries, but I'm also going to understand that it's not known to me yet.
Yeah. It might not be completely known to her, but she has a feeling, right?
Oh, she has. It's been there since she was a little kid. So the fact that it's persisted, I'm just like, okay.
It's funny. Sometimes the greatness comes, some people find their greatness in their path late in life. Some people that were great, people that knew them from they were little, like their parents are like, he always knew in some way, or she always knew.
Yeah.
You know, that she was going to something. She might not have seen it yet, but they always knew. That whisper, like you said, I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
You know? I have this visceral memory of when I was a child of my dad would sit me on the fuel tank of the motorcycle, right? And I would have the gas and the clutch, but my hands weren't quite big enough to reach the clutch, right? So he would put his hand over top of mine. And then my feet weren't long enough to reach to shift to the bottom. So he would put his on the clutch and then I would shift by pushing onto his foot. Mm-hmm. And he would let me go as fast as I wanted to. And he would feel when I reached for the clutch, and he would whisper in my ear, you know, listen for the RPMs. They'll tell you when to shift,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it gave me this sense of freedom. Like I was in charge of the motorcycle, right? I was steering it. I was telling how fast we went. I was deciding where we went. But he literally had my back. And to me, that was an analogy of a parent, you know, is like give your child a sense of freedom.
Yeah.
But for a while, help them get the clutch, right?
Yeah.
Help them like throttle back if they need to a little bit. You know what I mean? And then whisper in their ear. Sometimes they have their own whisper, and sometimes you can be their whisper, right?
Yeah. Well, you can just remind them because you just have a little more experience.
Yeah. Don't lecture. Just whisper and remind,
lecturing.
right?
I don't know that lecturing works.
Definitely does not.
I've really had the impulse to do it from time to time. And occasionally I want to get to a breaking point. But especially once they get to a certain age, it's like it's a no-go.
In the Army, we have after-action reports, right? Mm-hmm. And I always kind of treat Levi, he's my son, like that, like after-action report. Like let him make the mistake and be like, well, now what can we learn from this? You know, and guide him through his learning. And then also, if you see him doing something that, you know, rather than lecture them as in you're perfect and haven't made those mistakes, just tell him a story of when you did something similar and what happened. Like those are two tactics I use to try to avoid lecturing my son as much as possible. Yeah. I mean, he's still really young. He's 9, so.
Yeah, but still, 9, you can jump off high things.
It's when yes, exactly. And, you know, I have 3 rules for my son. I'm just starting to like indoctrinate that is like, don't lose your joy, try to spread joy, and don't steal joy. And like, I don't care what you do in life. If those 3 things are in place, and joy isn't just happy. It's like, if you're a plumber and you go and you do a good job for a fair wage and you're spreading joy. Like, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah. I think I saw a teenage mom. She walked up to the car and all the kids were in the car and she goes, okay, so have fun tonight. Don't do anything to hurt anyone else or yourself. And that pretty much covers a pretty big scope.
Absolutely. That's great, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes our words stay with our kids more than we realize, even when they're not making eye contact when we say it. If it comes from a kind place. Yeah.
They're hearing all of it.
Yeah. And they're seeing what you do, right?
Yeah. They'll embody and incorporate the good stuff.
Yeah.
They do. And it's really far out. When you see, because I have kids much older, I have 29, 21, and 17. It's like my 21-year-old says things and I'm like, oh, down to like she's reading labels on food.
Yeah.
And we didn't browbeat anybody about food.
Yeah.
So you realize if it really makes sense, kids are smart and it makes sense for their life, they'll bring it in.
Yeah, that's great advice. This totally isn't what I expected to talk about, but I'm loving the conversation, by the way. If you know me, then you know I'm a supplement guy. Yes, theoretically, we should be able to get all of our macro and micronutrients from the foods we eat. But realistically, that's very difficult to do. And just to ensure that I don't fall short on a daily basis, I lean heavily on First Form supplements. I've used and loved their products for years. I especially love their reds and greens because I'm not a big vegetable guy. I love their protein products, Level 1 and Formula 1. I like Level 1 before I go to bed, and I like Formula 1, especially their Formula 1 Clear, right after I work out. I love their omega-3s and their microfactor. If you're interested in learning more, go to firstform.com/Judd, links in my bio, and give them a try. So let's move on to direct fitness. So can you give some tips for fitness for moms, basically?
You said that word so reluctantly. Were you scared?
No, I was like saying women who had kids, but I was like, there's a word for that. I'm searching for it. Moms, that's the word I'm looking for.
She didn't say birthing person. Okay, just kidding. I'm not. So, this is the one area of my life that I am ruthless, and I always have been. Because I saw very early that if I didn't carve out the real estate, and when you got a new baby, maybe the real estate's 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not a 45-minute class or, bang iron for an hour. Maybe it's 5 minutes because they went down for a nap. But I always was diligent and ruthless. And then I expanded that real estate the older the kids got, because then it was like, yeah, cool, you can come in here with me. Or
you won't kill yourself for 30 minutes
right.
if you're in here with me.
Yes, and
or
we're gonna go to a gym and you're gonna go to the kids' care.
I love that. So just take advantage of the real estate you have and then expand with your real estate as it expands. Meaning the longer blocks of time you have, take advantage of those, right?
Yeah, because you have to be realistic. What happens, women do this crazy thing. We do a lot of crazy things. It's great. But like I love when women get pregnant and they'll say this. So don't say this. I'm getting fat. No, you're not. You're growing a baby inside. So you're not getting fat. Is it the time in your life to get in the shape of your life? It isn't.
Yeah.
But if you've had a level of fitness, you can sustain that pretty good forever through your pregnancy. And you're going to have natural limitations that you're going to adhere to, and you'll figure that out. The baby comes out, and then if certain women all of a sudden feel this weird pressure, I just have to get back in shape. It's like, well, no, you need to recover.
Yeah.
You need to recover from pregnancy, from childbirth. Now you're nursing.
And I think social media doesn't necessarily help that, because they see these women doing back squats with the baby on their back or on their front and deadlifting. It's like, good for them if they can do it. You don't have to do that.
No, you don't. And it's ridiculous, too, to think I'm sleep deprived because my kid wakes up every 2 hours, as they should, because it's natural, and they're developing. And if you get the opportunity to nurse, there's a depletion there that is real. And so it's like anything, setting realistic goals that match where you are, but that you don't compromise and you push just a little further.
All of it, yeah.
Because I think what happens is they create these inflated goals that's why you're going to give up, because they're too hard. Yeah. I shared with you that I just interviewed Rich Davini, who talks about moving your horizon. So your grand place is, I want to get back in shape. And maybe for some women, it's like, I like to run marathons or do half tries. Okay, great. That's your final horizon. That's your thing. But in the meantime, move it closer. I would like for this week to move my body 5 of the days of 7.
Yeah.
And make these mini horizons that you have these successes and you can build upon.
Yeah.
And you get success, you get dopamine hits. But to beat yourself up, especially when you have new and little kids. Toddlers are harder in a whole other way than a newborn. A newborn you can kind of wrap up and they sit right there and you can sort of do stuff.
Toddlers actively try to kill themselves every day.
Well, yeah, and they're just, everything's death-defying. So set those realistic goals. Don't BS yourself. That's the other thing. Don't give it lip service. Like, I want to get in shape. That is very vague and big. And what does that mean? And that could be a million different targets. So that means set the mini goals, set what's realistic based on where you are, your recovery, and then expand, but be a brute. Everyone grows up. Like my children know, they have grown up with me my whole life. I'm going to train.
Yeah.
So that's just part of our language.
Yeah.
And even Laird is a really generous and supportive husband, but he's probably not going to be like, so what time are you going to work out today? It's like, that's my responsibility. Yeah. And maybe someone's caught up in their own responsibility, work, all these things. So to teach and give women permission, and if I have to attach a positive thing to it to make them do it, what a great example you are for your children.
Yeah.
And so, because somehow we need justification for everything, right? Like, well,
as much as that positive example, you're carving out some time for yourself. It goes beyond exercise. No, I'm carving out time.
Oh, no, that's what it is.
Yeah.
See, people attach exercise as something that you do so you can fit into a pair of pants. Has nothing to do with it. It's your personal time. I often say it's the time that I'm stripped away from all the roles that I am. I'm not a working person. I'm not a wife. I'm not a mother. I even forego being a female in that moment. I just go to my essence.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity, too, to kind of develop and sort of prime that masculine energy, which helps me navigate my days.
Yeah. I mean, it's important for especially the moms of daughters to see a woman prioritize, carve out time for herself, and to know that's okay. I giving advice to women because I'm a man.
Yeah. How's that go?
Yeah.
Does it land?
Well,
Does it land?
because I know where men come from and how we are.
Yeah.
You have to vocalize. Like, you have to say, listen, because we're dense. And if we're not told, we're not going to pick up on, we're not going to know what's right.
It's like, I wish I could train. Well, what does that mean? Hey, at 9 o'clock, can you watch the kid?
Or they just won't say anything.
Yeah.
And the husband just going to the gym for an hour and a half, and the woman is stewing on this. She's like, how dare he go to the gym? The man is just fucking clueless.
Yeah.
And so it's like, listen, I want to get back in shape. I need your help in that. And by that, I mean, I need you to compromise a little bit and maybe watch him for 30 minutes so I can work out for 30 minutes. Will you do that? Because we're good at, once we make the agreement, following through. It's like, okay, I'll do that.
And they want to.
We do. Well, we should. Yeah, we definitely do.
No, listen, when I say you want to, it's you want to be helpful. You don't know how to insert. Exactly. Especially when you're talking about babies, kids, new babies, because mom is sort of running the show in a certain way. Yeah. So it's like, well, do I step in now? How about now? Yeah. So I think you're right about, I don't want to say spelling it out, but spelling it out. Somebody explained it to me like I walk in and out of the house 7 times and there's a pair of socks sitting on the floor. And I think to myself, well, if Laird loved me and cared about my feelings, he would pick it up.
Well, they just don't see it. I'm a man. We don't see it until somebody tells us like, oh, okay.
He doesn't see it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really learning to say, hey, from this time to this time, can you help me?
You had a great part in your book when you talk about men. You meet a certain kind of man and you're attracted to him for that reason. And then when women get married, they start telling him what to do. They tell him how to dress. They tell him where men don't like to be told what they have to do, but we don't mind being told directly what people need help with.
Right.
And there's a difference because then you still have the freedom to help or not, right? Obviously you should help.
Yeah.
But like, don't tell me I need to do something. Say, hey, I need help, because men like to help.
Yeah.
But we don't like being told that we have to help. You know what I mean? There's a subtle difference, and it shouldn't be that way, but that's just the way it kind of is. Yeah.
But it's kind of great.
Yeah.
Because what you realize is you want your partner to have a little defiance.
Yeah.
Like I like that Laird, and I'm not sure if I wrote this in the book, but Laird said to me, Laird's mom passed away like 2 years into our relationship. And he said to me one time, I made a comment, and because I am very, not bossy to him, but like if I'm in an environment and I'm in charge of the environment, I'm like, okay, let's do this, this, this. And it's not in a light-handed way. It's in a really direct way. And so one time I maybe said something to Laird a certain way, and he said to me, I had a mother, and she died.
Yes.
And I was like, and what's so great is it liberates me. I'm not now mothering every single person in my life. I'm not Laird's mother. I'm his partner.
That's great advice.
And so what helped me is, first of all, he shows up, he's helpful beyond, he'll do all the stuff. And I also am very clear that there's a boundary there that I never push on. Mm-hmm. I'm 29 years in and I could be exhausted. And unless I really have something like I'm ready to go, like there's a real thing, I always say I am not nicer to any person than I am to Laird.
Yeah.
Because he'll move more through my kindness and and me doing it. He's inspired to be his best, but not because I told him.
That is great insight, because I see this a lot. People that are very nice people, but none of those people that they're being nice to have really been there for them when they needed them. Usually the one person that's been there for you is either your husband or your wife, right?
Yeah.
And those are normally the people that we're the least nice to. So if you look at like what they deserve, you know what I mean? Like they deserve, if anybody deserves your niceness, not just your love, your niceness.
Your kindness.
Yes. And who did I hear this from? I think I read it in a book. It's like women tell their husbands all the time they love them, but they very rarely tell their husband that they respect them. And that registered with me. It's because like I don't need a woman to tell me she loves me every day. My mother did that. You know, like you said.
That's right. Well, you want to be appreciated and respected.
Yeah.
And we would like to be cherished and made to feel safe.
Yeah.
And made to feel special.
Yes.
And I think, it's interesting. It also comes down to you want to have a certain kind of relationship. Like I would like to be loved and adored and treated kindly. Why would I not do that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I always say to people, it's on you to be the things that you're hoping the relationship will represent, and you just hope your partner's on the same page.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we wait for our partner to reciprocate.
Yeah, or if he does that, then I'll do this. It's like, no, man, go get in there, be kind, be hardworking, be loving, show up. And if after a few years they're not doing it, you go, hey, either we're going to reevaluate or I'm out or whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
But I call it the up cycle. I go up, you go up. You're showing up, you're going up, you're really improving, changing, modifying. I'm like, whoa, I'm going to up my game. I'm going to level up. And
I think if you're somebody that doesn't do that, that's a red flag. If you're leveling up, whatever that is, whether you're getting your diet right or you're pursuing your career, and that doesn't bring them up too, that you feel them trying to pull you back down, that's a big red flag, I think.
Yeah, and it may not be the right partnership.
Yeah.
Or partnerships work for a period and something else. And that's something that's really important for me, whether it's people's fitness or eating or even their life. However it's going to work best for you.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. You don't have to do it like me. But you still have to be responsible. So if it's not the way you want it, it's on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I read somewhere like the 80-20 or the percentage rule.
Yeah.
So like a wife or a husband will come to the partner and be like, listen, I only have 30% today. And they put a percentage on it so they can paint the picture. Can you give 70% today? So if you're a husband, it's like that means you have to do some dishes when that's normally not your job.
Yeah.
Or you have to fold a towel, God forbid. For a woman, that might be, mowing the lawn if the husband's back went out, because women can mow lawns, right? Yeah. Like, and it's like couples that do that they just lay it out like, I need this today.
Yeah.
And I know that works well for men. Like if somebody says, hey, I only have 20% today, I don't care if it's my wife or somebody else. Can you do this for me? I want to say, yes, I can, right?
It's so clear and it keeps flow. And the other sort of adjunct to that is I've had days where I didn't know I was at 40%. And at the end of the day, I will say point blank to Laird, I recognize I just was not my best and I'm really sorry. Tomorrow I'll be better.
That's great advice. Yeah.
And I don't do it for him. Yeah. I do it for me. So I'm not afraid to not only stay accountable, because we're so afraid to be like.
So you've brought up two of my three. You brought up gratitude and accountability.
Yeah, it's everything. My coach from college taught me that. And so that I'm clear with myself. Yeah. That I don't become afraid of my weaknesses, but I'm still willing to look at them. And then if you can take ownership, and if your partner doesn't do this, oh my God, it's like, hey, thanks.
Yeah, exactly. I think we say if we're afraid if we're accountable, we're going to be held, or we're going to be blamed.
Yeah, we're going to get slaughtered.
Things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're with a partner that takes advantage of your accountability and blames you, another red flag, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're out.
How about diet for women that are their moms or just had a baby and they're struggling with their weight, you know, that's tied into fitness, but it's another aspect to that. What advice would you have for them?
Well, first is sleep as much as you can. And I know when they go, when the baby's down, then we start doing like organizing our environments because it helps us feel sane. I would say in the beginning, you know, especially even in pregnancy, right? Some foods aren't appealing, and then all of a sudden bagels are like, yeah, I want bagels. I always say in the pregnancy part, remember actually before you conceive, that's the nutrition for the first trimester of the baby. So if if this feels important to you, what does that look like? So, whole foods, certainly enough healthy fat is so imperative. And once you've had the baby, instead of going on that big goal, that big horizon of, I want to be thin. How can I be as healthy as possible today? What does that look like? And what's my strategy to make that happen? So first of all, if you don't want to eat it, probably don't have it in the house. And if you've had a new baby, you're in the house a lot. And you have stress or you're sleep deprived, so you're going to go for those quick, especially carbs, easy carbs. So try to have the foods that you can stomach that you know are going to support you. So again, those healthy fats, something that's easy and quick to prepare, because if it's too elaborate, you make it impossible. And think about you're nurturing yourself and your baby and your overall health. And where that leads typically is that end goal of how do I look?
Exactly.
Right?
I just had this conversation with someone. That's so funny. About on the men's aspect, like focus on how you feel and perform.
Yes.
Eventually it's going to lead to how you look.
And it does. And people, they can't buy into that. They don't understand it, because what can we do today that's going to impact us in 5 months is a very hard bill to sell. It's even like talking about longevity. It's like, well, if you do this in 30 years, it's like, that's hard for a lot of people. So it's like, what do you think could be in your house? What things are available to you for lunch and dinner that are easy and realistic that you think are going to support your health? Because those are lined up with being fit, looking fit, being vital, all these things.
It's funny you brought up sleep. So I've been a trainer for a very long time, right? And there is a difference between guys and girls, right? A woman will come to me that needs to lose weight, and she's willing to do whatever it takes. She's willing to do whatever hard workout. She sticks to a schedule. She's willing to record. She's willing to track her nutrients. And I don't give her what she wants. The first thing I talk about is like, well, how's your stress? How are you sleeping? Because for women, 9 times out of 10, it's stress.
I think it kicks our ass physically too, way more than men. I think you guys metabolize and
we just don't think about shit. We don't think about anything.
Yeah, your
That's
cortisol,
good and bad.
I think our cortisol rams us so hard. Absolutely. And I think a lot of women that are dealing with those extra pounds, they don't realize whether it's their gut or their constant worry and stress, that even if you ate perfect and you trained perfect, I don't think you'd get the outcome you want.
No, not until they get find ways to manage your stress. And so a lot of times I was like, we have to eat a little bit more of this, and you can't do as much work. That's not what they want to hear. Whereas guys, they will fight me tooth and nail to like track their calories. And everything has to be a game for them. Like they want us to feel like a Spartan.
Or a competition.
They want to eat like cavemen used to eat. You know what I mean? So I got them, they want to know how I trained in the military. It's like we're just perennial kids. It's crazy.
It's beautiful though.
It's like, let's start by you not stuffing chips in your face every night, and then we'll talk about what Navy SEALs do. Let's baby steps, man. Yeah,
they're like I've tracked, I've done this, and I'm like, you drink tons of alcohol. Like, why are you talking to me about all this gamified BS when you don't do the first principles?
I heard about
on
this
any
drug,
of this.
or what kind of steroids do you? They always ask me like what I'm on. I'm like, oh my god, man. Well, I'm not on the couch eating chips at night. Let's start there.
That's right. I mean? We talk about the hacks are layered on after. If you're doing your first principles, then okay, we can talk about this and that. But a lot of people don't. It comes back to work and consistency, as you know, and people don't have the support or the plan and the strategy to do that day in and day out and week after week and month after month. And I think a lot of it is community, but also developing skills to deal with life. That you're training. I use my training for that, but also I'm reading all the time. I'm having to take a look at, well, that practice, that worked from like age 16 to 22. And now at 55, do I need that? I don't.
Absolutely.
I'm not living there. So it's really being able to look at yourself with this kind of a sense of humor and an honesty to be like, oh, I understand why I do that. I don't need that. What am I going to be responsible and replace it with and do it?
That's great advice. Oh my gosh.
And not be a victim. You know, that's the other thing for me is a big one. I always tell my daughters, never be a liar and don't be a victim. Don't do that because you're not going to end up where you want to be.
Yeah. A lot of it's really gross when men do it. When men play the victim,
Well,
because
it's bitchy.
it's
for me, it's very beta.
Yes.
And as a female, I'm just like, oh God.
Yes.
Come on.
Especially when you're surrounded by strong women, and then you see women play the victim or pull the female card.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I'm not saying what you're saying isn't valid, but I've seen a lot of women that have kids and have busy jobs and have husbands that aren't supportive, and somehow they still find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
So maybe go talk to them. You know what I mean?
Well, there's another part of this too, which is on the moments I feel buried, because there are times I'm like, whoa, and I'm swearing at everyone inside my, when I am folding laundry, I am kind of, and women go through things, and I'm where it's like everyone in your family is just annoying you, and then I'm reminded, oh yeah, you chose this.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's that, so, I talked to Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, and she goes, sometimes I give myself like a 15-minute pity party, and then it's like, okay, so go and do your thing and take that extra long shower, regroup, but you can't just say, I want these things in the air. Yeah. What's the plan?
Yeah. I always say hope is a plan.
Yeah.
You want hope, like,
yes,
have a plan.
Yes.
That's so much great advice packed into a short amount of time there.
Do you want to talk about hypoxic training?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want to. So as soon as I read that, I was like, this is very interesting. And can you kind of explain what that means to people?
So I didn't do any. Laird has always done hypoxic training in his own versions. He even sits with like a Hypoxico, the machines. Have you ever seen it with the canister? So
and he, because as a bit like some people don't realize, when as a big wave surfer, you are underwater sometimes for up to how many minutes?
Well, it's not just that. You're at max heart rate.
Yeah.
So you go into that environment.
Yes.
Because listen, I can hold my breath no problem for 3 minutes when I calm down and down regulate and do all the stuff. No, we're going to go as hard as we can on a stand-up bike and get our heart rate up to 210. Yeah. Now jump in the pool with a 40-pound dumbbell.
Yes.
You can barely get a rep, right?
Yeah.
So with big wave surfing, that's more of what they're contending with. Yeah. So Laird, it's sort of like learning how to breathe longer periods of time with less oxygen. So we do a drill right now with it. I believe it's called the Hypoxico. It's a machine. So you put the mask on and you get down to, about 70, 63%. You sit there for a few minutes, then you take your mask off. You go back up to 95% blood oxygen. Then you go back down, and you can do that for like 10 rounds, right? So you're learning, because it's uncomfortable also. Right, you're
learning not to panic and discomfort.
Air hunger, all these words that they use, right? Good books for that are like Patrick McCune, Oxygen Advantage, and others. So pool training was the one for me, because I'll give you a quick analogy. So in doing it, it's like you go, okay, we're going to go there and back, or hell, 4 times, there, back, no breath with a dumbbell, swim. Okay, so it's task completion. A lot of times when we get ready to do something, we upregulate. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we actually need to start something and right before even relax a little more. Mm-hmm. It's counterintuitive to everything we're taught in life. Mm-hmm. So
I talk is this with their music. Like, be careful with your music. Be careful about being too amped up.
Yeah.
Because you ever notice when you're really amped up, you get fatigued really fast.
Yeah.
Like when a game starts.
You gas out.
And you got to get over that period,
Well, and I'll add to that. 40% of your brain's occupancy is dedicated to your vision.
Yeah.
So in pool training, what I started to learn is, even it's all the nuance, because the water's an objective teacher. So it's great. It's definitely not personal. So you can, it's no one's opinion. Mm-hmm. So we do the drill. One time I can't do it. The next time I get a few cues. What are those cues? For example, you can hold your dumbbell, but you don't have to squeeze it. You can tuck your arm in, because this is all much bigger. Now I'm hydrodynamic, because it's important. When you're in the water, it makes a difference.
You dilate your eyes, don't you?
And I almost close my eyes. And then even my tongue in my mouth. Mm-hmm. And when I go to hold my breath, I don't go, This creates tension. I take a big open breath and I just seal my mouth. My lips are very soft. My eyes are passive. My jaw is soft. And even my arm, as I move through the water, it's soft. It's only hard here to generate force.
Yeah.
So I started learning.
There's so many life lessons in all of that, though. You know what I mean? Beyond fitness, even. Just
this is what the pool is.
Being in tune with your body and what's going on.
And also your thoughts.
Yeah.
If I'm like,
your world becomes very small, right?
And when they talk about meditation, notice your thoughts. The pool forces that. So let's say you and I are training next to each other in lanes. I've had this all the time. I'm in my house. I got 15 guys in my pool. Some are good. Some are new to it. Some guy will go by me. You're at my house. My pool, right? Some guy will come by me and stroke, and his hand comes by my head, right? And in the old days, I'm like, this idiot. Like, he's in my house. Like, you're going to drown me in my own
He's
pool.
probably about to drown.
Right. And now if you did that, I just kind of like, like in my mind, I might go, that was close. Yeah. But I don't attach a whole myriad of emotions, thoughts, feelings, opinions, because I can't afford the oxygen.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be my new phrase. Man, I can't afford the oxygen.
I can't afford the oxygen. So it really taught me in real time all the leaks.
Yeah.
And so now, having coached, hundreds of people, and I always tell everybody, listen, the reason I'm the one, along with the two other guys, mostly like if we do these events, Laird runs you through heat and ice. We don't have Laird teaching pool, even though it was Laird's kind of brainchild, because Laird's comfortable with, I feel like I'm going to drown.
Yeah.
I was the weakest link, so I had to figure out.
And you knew how to communicate to people that also felt like they were comfortable for the first time.
Yes. Yeah. So I go, listen, I'm trying to tell you all the secrets. I made all the mistakes. And I'm going to give you, and even things like people don't, if I say, hey, I need you to look down when you're swimming because you're hydrodynamic. If you look up, now you're sinking the heaviest part of your body, ass and legs.
Yep.
That's probably 10, 13% harder. If you look down, because your impulse to go, where's the wall?
Yeah.
Is so great. I go, your peripheral will never let you hit that wall.
Yeah.
You're going to get to the wall. Yeah. Do yourself a favor. Look down.
Yeah.
Because now your buoy is helping hold you up.
Yeah.
So it's really being able to take feedback from an element like water that teaches you. It's so powerful. And then you can do all the stuff, right? Like you can be more fit, you can perform with less air. Yeah, I can be ballistic. I don't have to crush my joints. There's all these other parts that are amazing.
Yeah. And CO2 tolerance does improve with that, which is very important for performance and health and a lot of
Well, it's touching it. So what happens is, let's say I've pool trained for 15 years now, right? So when I'm out of air, I'm like, been here before, because I'm not out of air. My CO2 is high.
Yep.
So I always tell people, when you get that impulse, you'll see especially fighters or intense CrossFitters, they'll come out of the air and they'll go, oh, and I go, listen, let me tell you a secret. When you're out of air, that's actually not what happens. Your fingertips get numb, your toes get numb. If you're a Navy SEAL that's well trained, you'll actually black out. So you're technically not out of air.
It's funny because once SEALs in the pool training, they drown the first time. It's easier for them to drown again and again.
Yeah.
Because they don't panic when they get there.
Well, and that's why they're dangerous, right? The better you are at this kind of training. That's why Laird says we're never going to scrub CO2 before we do a long drill. We're going to meet it where it is.
Yeah.
But I always say to them, okay, you feel out of air, your CO2 is high. Just let a few bubbles out. Your brain, you can go literally 2 more lengths of side by side. So 60 more feet easily.
Yeah.
Just by letting a few bubbles out.
That's funny. That's a common trick in special operations training too. Is like when you feel like you need air, let more out.
That's it.
Yeah,
and just teaching them, not because you'll see certain people go, baha. I'm like, no. And it has to be effortless.
Yes.
It has to just be boop, boop, boop. And I said, if you're truly out of air at the end of a drill, you sound like a dolphin. You sound like,
really?
Then you're moving into, now you're moving towards the edge. Yeah. So by practicing this, I've touched that curtain.
Yeah.
This is familiar. I know what this is. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I can go a little further. And the other side of this type of training in particular is you never do it alone because of that thing we're talking about. The better you are, actually, the more dangerous you are. Don't scrub your CO2. We're not doing free diving.
Can you explain what that means to people?
Okay, so a lot of times people, maybe they've been familiarized with free divers that go down and hold their breath way down for really long periods of time. That's a very different thing. That is, you're going for distance and time. So they're offloading their CO2 and they're air packing. So they're they're pulling in air, and they've also scrubbed all their CO2, so they override the impulse to breathe. So a lot of times you hear about free divers that drown because they've gone over the mechanism. They've bypassed the mechanism by scrubbing, by releasing that emergency chemical that says, hey, you're going to need to get some air soon.
Yes. Yeah.
So they have to be careful. But I find it to be such a powerful tool because now, in my life, I'll notice if I'm even breathing. Or if I'm training really hard. Laird always jokes, he's like, oh, it was hard, but there's air.
Yeah.
So your appreciation for chemistry, for CO2 and oxygen, for the ability to breathe deep, to expand, to breathe, instead of vertically, horizontally, learning all of these things that are, again, tools for everyday life. Because if our training does not complement, if it doesn't train the organism truly, I think higher, bigger, stronger, faster is very sexy. And if you're an athlete, you need it. However, in real life, if you can't get this organism to do better, so that means I feel stress. Cool. Can you make the right decision?
Yeah. You just acknowledge that you feel stressed.
Yes.
Now, what can you do?
And the water, accelerate. I can stand on the deck because I stand on top so I can see everything. I know very quickly a lot about you.
Yeah.
When you're there.
Yeah.
I know so much about people.
Yeah. I remember when I first got to Ranger Regiment, I was not. Had been a good runner in 10th Mountain, but the running at Regiment was an entirely different standard. Like if you were not running a sub 13.2 mile, like you were in like the remedial group, right? And there was a run, and I finished I was a platoon leader. I finished dead last in my platoon. It was a very embarrassing, hard moment. And I had an exercise science background. I was like, I got to figure out a way to change my training because I can't run 5 times a week. My joints can't take it, and I need to get better at running. So I started doing pool work, and I just remember just playing around with it because as an officer they give you some freedom to train, right? And I was like, well, on the first 4 laps today, I'm going to breathe every third stroke, right? And then the next time on the first 5 laps, I'm good, and then I'll give myself permission to breathe every second stroke after that. And then I would do intervals. So I'd go down and back. I'd take 20 seconds, and try to breathe it in through my nose and everything. And then all I focused on was how many laps can I go breathing every third stroke. And I don't really know what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
It's just a game I played. And then my running got way better, like better than it had ever been in my life from swimming because I just learned how to relax and build up more CO2 tolerance.
Well, and your lactic acid's at bay because your CO2 is present. See, that's the other thing people don't realize.
They think it's,
if you're mouth breathing all day long, you have no CO2. And so your oxygen can't get into the tissue, into the muscle,
they
and
think
into the
oxygen
bloodstream.
Good, CO2 bad, right?
Right. Instead of learning how to have that relationship, so people don't realize that if you can you'll be slower in the beginning when you run if you can keep it to the nose, that in time your body will adapt and you will be fatigued way later and become, like to your point, much, much better at it. Another thing that I've learned training athletes is, okay, you play basketball, you run up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. You got to go to the free throw line. So the best thing you could do in that moment is offload your CO2. Yeah. And people don't know how to even offload their CO2. So I always say use your teeth. So push through the teeth, out, so because you can grab it down from the diaphragm.
Wow, that's great advice. Yeah.
And Laird will do, because he's not afraid to just make noise and be rough. He'll go, ah.
Yeah.
So he's man noising in the corner of the pool. I blow it out. So what I teach people is get rid of that so then the air you're bringing in is helping you recover quick and downregulate as quick as you can. So I would imagine, what's that sport where they ski and then they have to shoot the obstacles? Have you ever seen that?
Biathletes.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Insane athletes.
Guaranteed from when they're going there, they figured out a way to get rid of the CO2. So they draw in the oxygen really deep and slow and long, and they'll downregulate really quickly. And so these were things like, certainly I wish I had known playing volleyball, that of course you aren't given those gifts. You're just given a lot of like zeal and brawn. And then as you get older, you're like, oh, tools.
And then sometimes people become better when they're older just because they learn the stuff.
Or at least we can help other athletes
I used to love in the military watching really good shooters, and they'd do a kit run and be like gassed, and then they'd have to show accuracy with their weapon and fix them. And then they would I just noticed like they're fighting for air, and then just like, you know, and they could it was uncomfortable, but they were just used to that discomfort, and they would not rush the shot. And then as soon as they're done, you know, they're trying to get the air in again because they need it, you know, or they feel like they need it for sure, you know, but it was cool to see that discipline in the moments that people will develop over time, you know.
It is. It's beautiful because it's the art of improving. And
it's a primal need that we feel that we're able to like overcome in the moment, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, you dance with the discomfort a little more. Yeah. I think too is switching gears in between too. A lot of times people sit by the side of the pool and they look at me, I go, don't look at anything. You've got to go in here. To your point. It's like I'm stressed. Let me drop in. I don't need to be out here right now. I need to go in here and manage in here.
Yeah.
And it's helpful, even if it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's great advice. It reminds me of something. Have you ever seen the movie Jason Bourne?
Yeah.
Do you remember when he's trying to figure out who he is because he lost his memory, and he's like, I know I can run for half a mile on a beach before my fingertips go numb? And I think that went over a lot of people's, but what he was referring to was he was taught that meant you're low on oxygen. And it's just funny you brought that up, the fingertip numbness. It's a small line they dropped in Jason Bourne. I'm like, that's funny because he's talking about being low on oxygen.
Yeah.
That's one of the signs.
It's very interesting. And in 15 years, I've only experienced that maybe 30 times.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah. That's great advice.
You can practice too. People can get what is it called, oximeter, and just wear it, and you can learn how to mess around with that relationship, and you can do it laying in your house safely.
Man, so, you know, advice for people that are doing, like, don't do it in the water if you're unsupervised.
Well, for us, our rules are never scrub when you're training, and, you know, don't do a bunch of like weird breathing, long hold, all that stuff in water.
Yeah.
Let's keep it on land. So if for some reason people do pass out, especially when they hyper or hypooxygenate, it's like, calm down. Yeah. And if you are going to pool train, even if it's just a training, I think people don't give things enough credit. So for you, for example, like, you're not just like with a weapon, like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, it's like these things should be respected and treated accordingly, so they stay in the positive envelope of what they are, which is a tool, and not like, you know, I've had a lot of people come and they don't listen, and I used to try to manage it. Yeah. But what I did is I've learned to let them go far enough where they think they might even drown. Yeah.
And that's the best teacher, right?
Kind of. Because I can sit, I mean, blah, blah, blah. It's like I used to early, because I was so trying to be diligent. When we do events, for example, our water safety guy actually was a paramedic. Yeah. So he's a serious guy. Yeah. And I'll say to him, hey. Yeah. Because I know they're not listening. Yeah. And you just watch it.
Experience is the best teacher.
I think so. So I think that's good.
And it humbles them a little bit, because people are better able to learn when they've been humbled a little bit.
Especially sometimes successful people are the most dangerous.
Absolutely.
Because they think they know something.
The worst people in the military are people that used to be like law enforcement or would shoot a lot in civilian life, because they won't listen. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the worst speed, you know, coach speed, is the kids that are already kind of fast. They don't listen. The slow kids will listen to anything you tell them. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's funny.
I think you should go through life like that.
Yeah, absolutely. John Wellborn said, you know, go through life as a white belt. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was great advice. It's funny because I recently, you know, in the last couple of years, like, picked up breathing techniques more and more. Mm-hmm. Are there, and people ask me, like, what can I'm a big advocate of just trying to, like, hold your breath for a minute or two every day. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And the benefits of that. And,
absolutely. Yeah. We do a lot of that. Laird is way more diligent in his practice than I am. And I will use it obviously in pool, but just doing things where you maybe oxygenate your system and then on an exhale, hold. You know, that's even what we've incorporated in pool training, where it's like, hey, you're pretty good at this now. So we're going to do this drill on an exhale now. Yeah. And it sucks, you know. So, but it's just playing around and not being afraid. Laird will oftentimes be on a stationary bike and then maybe every 3 minutes sprint and hold for 30 seconds. And so start to incorporate that. Yeah. You could do it in rowing, where you're going, and then all of a sudden, you know, on minute whatever, you hold for 15 seconds and just start to play around with it. I think it's an interesting tool.
I want to dig deeper into this So I do a lot of intervals like on the bike or on the rower, and like I'll make myself do, just because I'm high heart rate for me, just a nasal only in with a pursed breath out, twice as long out as in.
Yeah.
And I'll make myself do it for the first minute after that. You know what I mean? Until I feel like I'm going to pass out, and then I'll let myself breathe more naturally. And then I just expand that duration. It just being just like deliberate and disciplined with your breathing, so I like box breathing a lot and pursed lip and nasal only breathing. What are some other diaphragmatic, what are some techniques that you would encourage people that they can do on their own, either in between workouts or like in the morning, at night?
So morning would be maybe, try to upregulate. So a lot of times so if you are going at altitude, you want to offload your CO2. So you want to double out one in. But if you're waking up, maybe you want to fire up the system. It doesn't mean get crazy. It just means wake up. Here we go. So more in than out. Night, obviously, longer exhale than inhale. So if you go 7 seconds in, these are kind of realistic. And then either through your teeth or pursed lips, 14, 15 seconds out.
Yeah.
Pretty much in about 2 minutes, you're going to move into your parasympathetic.
A lot different. It's crazy how fast it happens.
It is. So I'll often
or just controlling your exhale. A lot of people never think about controlling the exhale. They just let it go out.
Yeah.
Like they don't push it out or push it out steadily and see how long they can last. Like they don't ever fully empty.
No. Well, it's scary. And we talk about this. When you go to the hospital, when they let you out, like if you're having some kind of lung or breathing thing, you've got to be able to make the ball go up. You actually have to learn how to exhale.
Yeah.
So we all think about, inhale is so important. It's like, let me tell you what's important. Exhale is important.
Yes.
And things that have been helpful on how to grab your breath, because a lot of times people don't know how to grab their diaphragm. And I learned this from Belisa Vranic.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Years ago. Lay on the floor, take your index finger, put it below your belly button, breathe in, pop your belly out.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, especially women, hold it in, suck it in, flat tummy, all the stuff that we're taught all the time. So if at first just breathe in and then let it out, but take the belly button, drop it. Because we don't understand how to rinse it, pull it, get it out. So that's a good way to practice. And then pretty soon you can do it and grab that deep, full, long breath, usually through the nose. It's hard to get it in through the mouth that deep. Usually the mouth kind of ends at the bottom of the ribs.
Yes.
It's hard to get it down. So you got to use the nose to get it down. So just teach people, play a song, do that. You'll be exhausted, by the way.
It does.
It's
very
hard to
fatiguing.
go.
So, like losing weight is just
carbon bonds.
Yeah, it's just more carbon out than in.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to
Breaking
it.
carbon
so people
bonds.
are always like, can you lose weight by just exhaling? Yes, you can.
Yes.
Try it.
That crazy blonde lady who was on at midnight selling you whatever to get skinny with breathing. I remember watching that thinking, this chick's out of her mind. And then I was like, oh my goodness, she knew something. Andy Galpin talks about that, breaking carbon bonds.
Yeah.
Right?
He breaks it down. I love the way he breaks stuff down. Yeah.
So I think that's a one way. And literally, to your point, if you practice breathing, it's so that you notice. Because you'll be sitting at your desk, you'll be on an uncomfortable call, you'll be edgy, it'll be 3 o'clock, it's like the day's piled on, and you think, oh my God, I'm holding my breath.
Yeah.
So just the awareness, and the seat is not your friend for that deep, long breath. So get up, walk around, really get some big open breaths, lay on the floor, do a set of 30, 100, whatever it takes. And what'll happen is that tool will be readily available to you because you have awareness to it.
That is fantastic advice. I have a little cue. For me, it's the number 3, right? But you can find whatever cue you want. And it's my check-in. It's like when I see 3, I'm like, where are my thoughts? What's my breathing? And so just whenever I see the number 3, it's just like, oh, what am I thinking? So, I do inside, outside edge thinking. I stay with the middle, like things I can't affect. So it's either in the moment. This is ideal. I don't always do this.
I love a perfect world. Give it to me.
Yeah. So in the moment or big thoughts, like concepts, ideas, dreams, wonders, curiosity. The middle is like worries, things I can't affect. What are people thinking about me? So when I see the number 3, it's a thought check. It's like, where are my thoughts? What's my breathing? And so I see 3, I'll just do 3 breaths just to get me back in tune with my breathing, like 3 deliberate nasal breaths, right? And where I actually push, it's the same concept, but I push out through the back of my pelvis. when I
love
breathe
that.
out. But it
because
does draw your breath.
but that's brilliant because then you're really getting all the way.
Yeah, and then when people they don't really know how to brace with weight either. They just think holding your breath. You need to be able to brace while breathing, right?
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you can't breathe out through the back of your pelvis to create stability. Like at that point, your only option is to hyperextend and hold your breath if you don't know how to do that.
So let me ask you a question, just out of my own curiosity. Is it sort of like the bracing is down low and then the breaths are a little more shallow and happening almost in a separate universe, right? From here and above, sort of lower chest and above?
While you're bracing?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's almost like two compartments?
But you have to hold your ribs in. While you do that.
Right, because you can't flex open.
Yeah.
Right, so that meant that, so it's not, see, the thing I love about that idea is what you're also doing is by breathing practices in that moment specifically, now you're okay with, I'm not going to get a full breath.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm just okay with enough air.
Yeah.
And that's different.
Yeah.
You're not sitting there doing some big squat and being like, no, you're just getting enough air to take care of business.
Yeah.
So I think people have to realize too that that's also a different relationship with.
It's a form of being relaxed while you're having to be tense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's hard to explain.
It's very interesting.
Because you can't always be fully relaxed, right? Like
No.
if you're fighting or MMA or layered on a surfboard, but you have to be relaxed in that tension.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe.
Well, it's like life.
It really is. Like you have to.
Yeah.
And here's another really cool thing. And I learned this because I saw my therapist doing it. And he never talked about it, but I've noticed, I'm bringing it up to him. He knows that people mirror each other.
Yeah.
So when he sees that I'm getting upset about something, I notice his breathing will change and he'll make sure I see it. Because
You know who else does that? Babies.
really,
So SIDS is they forget to breathe, right?
Yeah.
Sudden infant death syndrome.
Yeah.
So part of the thinking about having a baby in your vicinity when they're sleeping is their cadences to your breath. So you can take a sleeping baby and you can speed up your own breath loud and you'll watch them
that's
pick up
crazy.
their pace. So I think your therapist is, obviously, I think this is some primal stuff that we all have.
Yeah, it really is. Like
Yeah.
we take our cues and like people's heart rates and breathing, well, when they lay next to each other, will get into sync. I think it's really cool too. You know
Beautiful.
what I mean? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool. It is a powerful form of bonding. And if we're aware of that and we're in a tense situation and you notice people are mouth breathing, shallow breaths through their chest, and you don't necessarily, or a clenched fist and then turned in, like you don't have to say anything, but just like let your pupils dilate a little bit, like pattern the breathing for them, breathe out through your belly, open your palms to them, and you'll see how the tension in the room just gets diffused and nobody had to say a word.
Yeah.
It's really impressive how people pick up on all those subtle cues. You know?
I think a well-trained person who understands violence, you'll see a lot of that, obviously, where a guy comes up in, the guy's well-trained and he comes into some guy just having a freak out and they know exactly how to do that.
It's crazy. I don't know if they think about it or it's just something they're just so natural at.
I don't know. I think it's great because it's like they know that they could handle the situation if they have to, so that gives them comfort and keeps them relaxed.
And they've been in enough fights or conflict where they know like they have to stay relaxed in it in case it does escalate.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's a beautiful thing. It's if you can tell me the remedy when you have a wild teenager who's walking in with something, let me know.
But I mean, it really is though. I mean, simple things like don't match their tone. You
Right.
know, don't feel like you have to match their tone. You set a tone no matter what theirs is.
Yeah.
And your tone lives independent of their tone.
Yeah.
I see some parents do that, and it's incredibly impressive how they can maintain a steady tone when their teenager or husband is flying off the handle. And sometimes people think it comes across as docile, and like, no, that woman is very strong. Like she is maintaining a peaceful aura when her husband is when losing his temper, basically, you know?
That's why she has to train.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Because it's strength.
Yeah. I have gotten so much out of this conversation. I expect a lot, and I got more than I expected. We talked about things that I didn't expect you to talk about with you. If you're in Austin ever, I would love to do it again. And then when we get back out here, I would love to sit down maybe with you and Laird together. And that'd be an interesting conversation.
Oh, yeah. There's real dynamics right there.
I would love to see that.
Laird is one of the best people I know. He's, when people go to school in nature, They have a whole other really refreshing perspective that has really helped me as somebody who was navigating things with a specific technique. And they're great reminders. One thing Laird always says to me, and I think it's worth repeating because I think people need to be reminded. He'll see, because I think women are prone, right, to negative emotion more than men. Mm-hmm. It's normal. He'll notice maybe I'm worried about this or that, and he'll say, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then he says, and it is okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's true most times in life. And if we can just take a beat and be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And then go from there. But I do think feeling kind of good and being a little more well rested than sleep deprived when you can. When people think about health or they look at your physique and they think, oh, it's about moving heavy things and weight. It's like, no, it's about trying to show up as a human being. And
that's the most impressive part, is when people show up as human beings.
Yeah, and try to perform when it's uncomfortable for you.
Yes. And
you still say, okay, I'm going to stick to the game plan.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not going to let my physiology get the best of me. And I think for me that is the most interesting thing about performance. I can't, coming through athletics, that's impressive. I have a friend who played in the NBA, and he jokes with me all the time now because he's raising 4 kids. He goes, oh, this is way harder.
Yeah, than the NBA, absolutely.
And we knew him in his early 20s, and we're like, we tried to tell you.
They will never understand it until they have their first kid, I think.
No.
Since we have to wrap up, I do want to ask one question, because most of the people listening to my podcast are men. Mm-hmm. So talking to fathers of daughters, what advice, because you mentioned in your book how you weren't super athletic as a youth, you were tall and kind of clumsy. Mm-hmm. What advice would you have to give to fathers raising daughters as far as fitness and athleticism goes and self-perception?
I think dads have it tricky. First of all, it's about, you don't want to comment on your children's appearance. And sometimes what I love about dads, though, is they just throw one-liners out there, and you're just like, oh, God. So I wouldn't comment too much on their appearance, but one of dad's job is to teach them, whoever their children are, risk.
Yeah.
So think about movement as play and fun and taking chances, and the body as an instrument for that, versus, something that you put clothes on and makeup and an appearance. So dad teaches this moms can do it too though, but specifically dads, this relationship with this tool that could bring me adventure, and I can play and rabble rouse and be sweaty and all these kind of really fun things. Yeah. I wouldn't try to live through them in their athletic life. If they are interested, expose them. Mm-hmm. But if you start to try to be their dad coach, I think sometimes that's tricky, unless there's an agreement made between you. Yeah. Because if you're really going to do something because you love it and you're good at it, you will. Yeah. But not because some parent was on you and yelling at you after a game about the ball that you missed.
I've seen it over and over again.
It's a no-go. So, and I know dads it's like they mean so well, but there's sometimes the delivery is like, well, da-da-da. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're talking about a daughter, because she's different, and they'll shut down. So I would say from early, just show the play and the fun and the adventure of movement, of play. Yeah. And if it translates as they get older into sport and trophies and all, that's great.
Yeah, it's a side effect.
Yes, and Laird has often said sometimes his job, because also when a girl goes through puberty, sometimes they break away from their dad. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it was like snuggles and hugs and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden you start developing and maybe you're not comfortable as a girl.
But if you're linked with play, you'll always have a bond too, though.
You can play that way instead of, and so for him not to take it personal as she's developing, sometimes she is going a little bit more into autonomy in her own space because she's trying to figure it out.
Boys do that too in a different way.
They do.
Their fathers. It's hard for the father.
Yeah, so don't take it personal. And Laird says that's when he moves into being the post. He goes, you see that post over there, like that's holding up? He goes, sometimes that's what dads are. They come up, they check to see, is the post solid? Is it there? Yeah, it's there.
That's a great analogy.
And then they go.
Yeah.
And then because they know, and then they come back. You there? Because it gives them a sense of safety and security that I think is put into their sort of subconscious that is so powerful, and dads sometimes don't give that enough credit.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard differently to be a dad.
It's different challenges.
Because you feel like sometimes you're outside the loop, especially when they're little, and then when they get older.
Yeah.
So play, adventure, risk, and also be an example of what a good guy is.
Yes.
Because I think that I always say half the best people I know are men. And we've come in a time where
That's a great point. I think sometimes we get this thing, men versus women, and women love to hate on men. And that's a great acknowledgement to make, that half the best people you know are men. That's a great
They
thing.
are.
Different, but still great people in their own way, right?
Yeah, and we need each other. We all need each
Absolutely.
other. And it's hard enough as it is. So, a dad to a daughter exemplifies those qualities that are
Be the type of guy that you'd want your daughter to marry. Right?
yeah,
Maybe.
and beyond. Be the type of man that she understands that the other side of this is, if I take a job, the world's not out to get me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not at a disadvantage, because you're going to go to work and you're going to have people you work with who have sisters, daughters, mothers, and wives. They want you to be successful. You don't want to send young women into the world thinking that they're at a disadvantage.
Great
You
advice.
want to educate them, tell them the way the world works, and actually let them understand that not only is whatever they want to do possible, but that people are for you.
Yes. You came into this interview, I listened to you speak and read your books, read your book, and very impressive accomplishments. Extraordinary accomplishments. But after talking to you, you're equally as impressive with your amount of insight and introspection, and how you view life. And I think that one has a lot to do with the other. And I think that's a lesson that we can all learn from. That one is a side effect, the performance and the accomplishments of the things that you bring to those environments. And I am extraordinarily impressed with both.
Well, thank you. And just remember, everyone should just keep following the whisper.
Yes, I love that. That's a great thing to leave with. Keep following the whisper.
Yeah, because it's your life.
It was a pleasure to sit down and talk to you. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, I'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.